Okay, well, if you fluff the shout choruses and find yourself speeding up, I hope that it makes you feel better because all of that just happened. Welcome to the live stream for the third week of October. We're doing the arranging part of this month's tune, Little Shirley. And like the car talk guys used to say on NPR, don't drive like my brother. We'll be going over the existing vamp from week one and a new vamp for this week's lesson. And then 2 shout choruses. And I'll talk to you about how to integrate them into the tune. But definitely don't play it as fast as I ended up. That thing's sped up and it's hard enough to play at the right tempo, which is also feels a lot better at a nice slow lope. But anyway, my 6th grade teacher always said never to apologize when you're making a public appearance. So I'm going to stop talking about that now and make sure that we can start talking about the lesson material. So here we go. There it is. All right. So the 7-step arc. This is how we look at putting together a complete arrangement. When you make an arrangement out of a set of building blocks, you can very quickly get to a complete version of the tune, which is it's important if you're playing an instrumental tune in particular, where you don't have a different verse, different lyrics in every verse to make things sound like they're moving forward. You need to use put more attention on the actual shape of the arrangement to make the whole tune sound like it's going somewhere. So we've already had one vamp, and I've talked a little bit about what a vamp is, but it's basically a short repeating figure that you can cycle, and it works great as an intro. It can also work down here as an outro if you flip these two, but let's just go in order. So we'll start with the vamp, and then go with the next thing you can do is play the fundamental version and then the embellished version, which will make the embellished version sound like a more ornamented or syncopated version of the fundamental. Or in this case, with this month's tune, because there's an A and a B section, you could play the embellished version twice and then go into the B section, right? So this part twice and then into the B section. But that could take the place of these 2 sections. And then a solo. And we talked about improvising last time. So after you've set up the tune with a vamp and played the actual melody, you could then go in and play a solo. And that takes us up to what we've got this week. The new thing we'll be covering, besides an additional vamp that you can use, is the shout chorus. And the shout chorus is a worked out, usually like a sort of riff or chord-based version of the chord progression. So the term shout chorus comes from 30s swing era music, where a big band or even a small group arrangement would often end the solo section with a big orchestrated part where everybody was riffing on one idea. It sounds like a bunch of people shouting. And you hear this throughout other kinds of, you can hear it like, when you listen to like B.B. King live at the Regal, and when he gets to the 3rd verse of Sweet Little Angel and the horns come in, and that's kind of the same logic, right? It's like this big moment that kind of drives things home. So we're going to have a couple worked out things, a couple of shout choruses that we can incorporate. The shout chorus also provides a landing point where whatever's been going on in the solo, you kind of have this place that you're heading towards that you know is going to be solid. You can go towards this shout chorus and know that whether the solo is like great or just okay, you're going to land on this shout chorus that you've worked out, and the shout chorus is going to sound good. So it's a bit of a safety net in the arrangement. And then after that, you can retreat to the vamp and go out on, say, the embellished, or in this case, you could play through the whole AAB again. Or after the shout chorus, you could go back to the tune and play AAB and then go out with the vamp. There's a lot of different ways you can do it, but you just need the building blocks. So we're going to add one more vamp to our stash today and then 2 shout choruses, and then you'll have all the pieces you need to play a complete version of the tune. So, first up, this is the embellished version of the vamp that we had in week 1. And so this one, I won't go through this much because I went through the details of how to play this in the first week, and you can go back and check out that live stream. But so that's the vamp that we had the first week, and that's the vamp that I was using as my intro and outro just now. The second one is more syncopated. It's got a lot of breathing room, so it's a bit of a high wire act. You got all this space in here, but it sounds like this. Sorry. So if you look at just the top part, right, if you ignore the thumb notes right here and just look at the melody, it's just a blues lick, right? 1 and 2, 3 and 4 and 1 and I'm not even gonna try to count this because it's so syncopated, but 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and 1, 2 and 3 and 4 and 1 and 2 and 3 and 1, 2 and 3 and 4 and 4 and 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and 2 and 3. So that's the melody, and then once you have that, you can look at where these bass notes follow along underneath. And you basically don't have the bass notes on these pickups. So so whenever you're on the downbeat, you can see that you've got, so here in the first measure we have, and then in measure 3 we have, and then in measure 5 we have, same thing as measure 1, and then, that's a longer phrase. So you can see this also falls into that classic kind of call and response, right? We've got a phrase going up, and then it goes up a little further. But 2 short phrases, right? And then a longer phrase. So that's in octaves, which is kind of a cool sound and really punches through. You could play single note licks, but it doesn't sound like you're playing a part, right? But you have 2 voices. Now it sounds like something you've worked out that you're doing on purpose, and it has more impact. So you could start with that, if you can play it right. Twice at the very beginning of the tune. But that's way too fast, of course. So Or coming out of a solo, right? And then you have this whole thing as the answer to each solo. So on the way into a solo, on the way into the tune, on the way into a solo, on the way out of a solo, different places you can use that vamp. That vamp is very similar in feel to the B section. So you could even do a solo and use this vamp number 3. In place of the B section. And then back into your solo. Okay, so a couple of vamps, and then here's the first shout chorus. So here we're keeping the bass that underpins the tune, and we're putting this sort of syncopated blues riff on top. So if you look at the top line, we've got and these two phrases here and here are really basically the same. They just end backwards. So flat third to root, fourth to root, flat third, root, fourth, and then the second time, and then we go backwards, the fourth to the root. So the first phrase, and then, so almost the same thing, and then this little additional blues lick here with the flat 5. So then we got to put that over the bass. So you end up using this weird, almost a B7 shape, so that you can get these notes over this bass. So you just have to go step by step. series of shapes from here, the index coming in on the third string behind the middle finger, and the ring finger down on the G. So this stays put, and then open, and then index, and then middle and ring come down on either side. So that looks like this. This shape really is kind of pivotal. So on that third phrase, here in measures 5 and 6, I might jump. I mean, your index finger's here, so you could play like that, or you could bring the ring finger over so that you're ready for that shape. Like that. And then finally, same idea, very similar syncopation, but up on the high strings. So here we're playing sixths straight out of week 1 with the harmonized Dorian scale. So here's the root, second, flat third, and fourth of E Dorian. And here are the flat third, fourth, fifth, and natural sixth of, or raised sixth of E Dorian, right? So the way we're going to end up fingering them is to use a bar for when we're playing across the top, the second fret on the third and first strings, and then ring finger and middle finger when we're here at the fourth and third fret, and then second finger and first finger when we get up here. So the lick itself, let's see if I can make sure I got this right. Oh, it goes down first. So it's actually the same second and first, middle and index finger for when we're down here at the fourth and third fret, and when we go up. So first we got to play it this way, and then this time we got to get it this way. So just make sure you can find the double stops. Oh shoot. That's right. We got to play it. So this is what happens when you break apart the melody from the bass. It's easy to forget, like you can't do this because you got to have the bass down here. So we're going to get the B7 this way. There's the B7. So we're actually going to play an interval of a seventh. Okay, question from Christian. How do you play the G on the bass in bar 1? Okay, I am using a bar to get the third and the first string, and then reaching over with my middle finger. It's a weird shape, but one that is not that hard to do once it becomes familiar. And I'm hammering on at the beginning from open to second on the top 3 strings. And so here I'm grabbing the B7 and then sliding up with my pinky and letting go of the rest of the chord. So you only really get a quarter note for the B bass here in measure 2. So. And then just a bunch of descending. There's that Dorian note again. There's the second. 2 pull-offs in a row. So pulling off and then pulling off from D to B and then from A to G and down to the root. So all together. From there. So you could come out of a solo into the tune. So that's it. Let's go back and look. Those are the 2 shout choruses and the 2 vamps. So now we've got 2 different vamps to choose from into the tune itself, and then a solo, which you could play one of those worked out solos from last week as you build up your ability to do your own soloing and improvisation. Then into one of the shout choruses, back to the vamp, play the tune, maybe vamp one more time, and you're out. So let me play through the whole thing one more time at a more reasonable tempo. And if you've got questions, put them in the chat as I go, and I will spend a little time on them. I think there were a couple questions also from the forum, so I'm going to go look at those after I play through this again. So I will do the octaves. The octave. I will do this octave vamp to open the tune. And then when I get to the shout chorus, I'll do, let's see. I think I'll do this one. So, here we go. Okay, 1, 2, 3, and.
Okay, so that's how the pieces go together. Let's see, bunch of questions here, or a few anyway. Okay, from Ricky. Hey, Ricky. Everyone is glad you made it through the hurricane. Can you go over a couple of ways to end the song? Yeah, absolutely. It says here that it's held for review, that question. I don't know what that means. It's totally talk about that. Yes, a couple of ways to end the song. Sorry, I'm having some internet issues. I don't know why that's... There we go. Okay, cool. Yes, a couple of ways to end the song. Let's see. Aside from the way I just ended it, which is going into the vamp. And then hitting a chord. But if you wanted a more like tagged way to do it, let's see. Let's say you were doing this one. Well, let's see. If you're ending with the tune, right? If you're ending with the embellished version like we are here, right? Then let's see. I would just do it again. Or repeat that little lick 4 times with an A chord in between, right? Or you could just repeat it. And then slow it down the last one. Or you could do that A thing
You could do like, you hear this a lot on like sort of gospel inflected hard bop stuff from the 50s. Like you could end on the A chord. So like, right? So that's coming out of the last. And then going to the 4 chord. That kind of ending sounds better to go to like a dominant chord as opposed to an E minor chord, which we've been playing for the whole song. But you could go back to E minor, or you could end on E minor 6. Or, you know, a more exotic voicing like this, with like the flat third and the 6 and the 9 and the 5. So for as long as you want, and then so that's a couple ideas. Let me know if you want some more, but those are all different ways you can kind of just embellish the ending. Okay, from Don, can you go through the B7 fingerings again? Oh yeah, sure. Yeah, so talking about the part that's here in the shout chorus. So I've just got middle finger on the 2nd fret of the 5th string, index finger on the 2nd fret of the 4th string, ring finger on the 2nd fret of the 3rd string. So I'm doing that opening hammer on with my middle finger, and then on beat 3, I'm putting down my ring finger for the G in the bass, index finger is getting the A on the 3rd string. And then this is, this is nothing, right? And then index finger comes in on the, to replace this finger. Index finger replaces the middle finger for the 2nd fret on the 4th string, so that you can get the B in the bass and the 4th in the melody. So and they're all coming down at different times. And then the second time, ring finger's coming down first, then the index finger, then the bass note, which is fretted by the middle finger. So that measures 3 and 4. Then here, and then 2nd finger in measure 6. And then middle and ring come down. And then index. I mean, you can put the whole shape down at once, but I've noticed when I've tried to break this down that I just tend to get there as I need to with my fretting hand. Right? And it sort of takes the pressure off a little bit. You don't have to get there. In fact, it would kind of mess things up if the whole thing came down at once, because stuff's still ringing out elsewhere. So, hope that helps. Let me know if it didn't. Bruce, sorry to be joining late. No problem. When you were doing the live stream last week and did endings, you ended with a really cool sounding altered chord. What was it? And Mike says, are you answering Bruce's question that it was a D major 11 with no root? D major 11 with no root. What's that? D major 11. Bruce, I don't remember. I'll have to go look at the live stream and see. Or if you want to look at it and flag the minute it was out and post it in the forum, I'll just look at it and answer it there because I don't remember what. Oh, I mean, no. Maybe that? I don't remember. That's like looks like an E7, but it sounds like an E minor 6. Maybe it was that. All the different ways I would end it are variations on that sound, on that E minor 6 sound. So not like a 7th, right? But with the 6, which reflects that Dorian sound with the major 6, that brightness against the minor 3rd. So there's the 6th again. Oh, okay, thank you. The E minor with a 6th and 2nd. Yeah, it was probably this, because that's got the flat 3rd, and there's the 6, and there's the 9. Okay. Got time for a couple more questions if you got them. Let me, while you're thinking and or posting questions, let me just take a look real quick at the forum and see if there are in fact some questions waiting there, because I don't remember. Let me double check and see. Okay. This is me going to the forum. Navigating. Okay. Where's my post about the... Oh, here we go. Let me pin this to the top, I guess. Okay. Oh, look at that. There were no questions. Beautiful. Just a few likes. Thank you for the likes. Always nice to know. The posts are going over. Okay. D major 11, no root, is a regular A7 chord on the 2nd fret with F sharp added on the... Oh. Sure, yeah. That's nice. There's the root, there's the flat 3rd, there's the 6, and there's the 9. It's basically something like that, only down here. Okay. Okay, from Ricky. Can you go over how you get the high E to ring out during the embellished version? Oh, you'd like that? I don't know if it's always ringing out, but is that what you mean? Like not touching it with the pinky? I think sometimes I'm letting it ring out. I'm able to let it ring out, but actually it's done as a melody note by beat 2 or by beat 3. Right? I don't really want it. Once I get to this note, I don't really necessarily want that note hanging out. So I'm not sure if that answers your question. But if I did want it to ring out, I'd just have to be careful. I'd want to be careful about the pinky at that point. But I'm not sure that's what you're asking about. So let me know and before I go on more and more about this. Nigel, what's the plan for next month? First of all, Nigel sent me a fantastic link this morning to a BBC podcast about the history of jazz. So someone knows what I like. Thank you. That was great. And I started listening to it. And it looks really good. Plus, I feel very have that American sense of feeling very sophisticated that I now have the BBC app on my phone. Okay. And then, oh, good. Okay. We got the high E string covered. Thanks. Good. And then, oh yes. What is the plan for next month? Yeah, so here's the backstory. So before I did the workshop handout, I actually worked out all of November and then sort of cut it down to make a really efficient hour-long workshop. And then I realized that I really covered a lot of what I wanted to cover in the improvisation on the topic of improvisation. I covered a lot of what I want to cover in November. It's in the workshop. Like, I don't want to go over that ground literally again, note for note. So what I've done is I've reposted the workshop, the capture of the stream, like the whole hour plus or whatever it was, hour and a half. And I've reposted that. So that's already in the special topics and workshop section. You can go see it now. But it's also going to be at the beginning of the month in November. And then each week, this is the current plan. It's changed a few times because all this week I've been shuffling and reshuffling it, trying to figure out the best way to do it. But at the moment, the plan is each week to take a different model for how to put the form of the tune together, and then explore how to use the rudiments and the permutations to practice that. So basically the 3 ABAC models that I went over were starting after the downbeat, right? So that's one way to do it, starting right after the downbeat. The other next way is to start before the downbeat. So you end up with a longer answer. And then the third way is to do a short resolution answered by a long resolution. And then answer all of that. So if we look at one of those models each week, we can then look at the rudiments, the rhythmic language behind each one of those variations, and how to create more licks based on the rudiments we need. And then how can we swap those into the solo? And then I thought it would be fun if each week we also added in one of those elements that goes in between the licks, right? So look at the rakes, how to get those integrated. Look at some of those double stops that go in between, and then look at some of the bass runs, maybe, so that in addition to playing that was the other one, was that sort of offbeat eighth notes thing. So sort of work on integrating some of the rhythmic language in between the licks, so that just basically how to take what we worked on in the workshop and just develop it so that it's more musical and more reliable. And so you've got a few specific variations to practice, some more licks to add in to the whole scheme of things, and then some additional ways to just fill in the rhythmic space in between the licks, so that you have like a really solid collection of tools to get through that kind of vamp environment. It's tricky because too much information, and then you're just like overwhelmed with possibilities. So I'm trying to keep this concise and not do, like you may have noticed, like this month I only did 2 shout courses instead of 3, because I'm like, I'd rather you get 2 really under your fingers than like feel like, oh man, like now I gotta like, I'm trying to lower the bar just a little bit so that it's easier to feel like you've gotten stuff done. because a lot of the feedback that comes in is like, this is great, but there's too much of it. I'll never get through all of this. And, I always want to lean towards like, there's tons of stuff to work on. But I'm beginning to understand that that's not always a net positive, because it makes it harder to feel like you've actually finished the month, or even over time, like you've finished the lesson. So I'm trying to dial it back just a little bit so that it's easier to feel like you've got what you were given under control. And so I don't want to go bonkers in November, because there's so much in just the workshop material alone that I think is pretty concise and pretty valuable. So I want to just take each week and just sort of take one aspect of what we worked on and just kind of develop a little bit, so that you just feel like you're getting more and more solid on the basic idea. A couple questions here. Wim, could you include alternating thumb as well, please? I'm going to present a similar kind of set of lessons on alternating thumb, but at a different time and in a different key. I think it's equally important, but I think it deserves its own set of lessons. Just like, we're doing this on a vamp right now, and eventually, we want to talk about, well, how do you change chords and move your thumb around and get through the whole progression? But I'm trying to keep these things a little more modular, again, so that it's easier to get down one piece of it. I mean, that's why it's called Fundamentals of Improvisation Volume 1, right? So it's like, let's get this one piece of it together. The idea is, just like the horizontal 3-step is about isolate the bass, isolate the melody, then put it back together. The reason we're working on just a vamp right now is to isolate the ideas so that you can just work on the rhythmic language, the rudiments, and work on turning the licks, developing licks using the rudiments, right? So that's why we're doing that, because if you start to worry about changing chords and what you can do on the 4 and the 5 chord, you've just multiplied the possibilities like by, I don't know how much, but a lot. So that's why we're doing this sort of intense focus on the vamp. Also because being able to improvise on, we've got tons of vamps. We're always vamping on every tune. Why not be able to improvise on that vamp? So that's kind of a thing we haven't even addressed before. So the isolating and focusing is one part of it, and the having a tool to improvise on the vamp is another thing. Because that's one of those things where at the end of the lesson I was like, oh, and you could improvise on your way out. But I never stop and explain how to do it. So I thought this gives us like some language for talking about how to improvise on a vamp too. So I hope that makes sense. Let's see. After the workshop, the whole form and phrase thing seemed to have finally clicked. Oh, fantastic. That's great. Maybe stretch out over 2 months. Well, I want to get back to doing, yes and no is the answer to Stephen Foley's question. Because we will be doing a new tune in December, but it's a 1-chord tune. So once we've gone through this deep dive on, how to create form out of a 1-chord vamp, then we'll take an actual tune, and we'll already have done a bunch of the improvisation work that we need to do before we even get to the tune in December. But in December, we will look at a new tune, and we'll get a few new tools for that tune, and then we'll be able to integrate it with the improvising stuff we've been doing. So it is it is going to kind of arc over a couple of months. I hope that answers the question about the alternating thumb and about that. And from Randy, can we learn more licks? Yeah. So part of what we'll do in November is we'll revisit the idea of how licks grow out of knowing the rudiments, right? So that if you have a specific rhythm over the bass, that you can then look at how to use that rhythm to create multiple licks, right? So like if you're doing that phrasing where you're playing, right? So 1 and 2, 3 and 4 and. How many different things can you make out of that just using the blues scale? Right? There's 4 new licks just by taking one specific rhythmic rudiment and applying it. So we'll talk a little bit more about the logic of that because I want you to be able to sit down and do that. Just go, oh, I got the scale. I got this rudiment. I want to give you the tools to make all those licks. And you got them now, but we'll go over it in more detail so the process is really clear so you understand how to do that. So it's all about like starting with those rudiments, turning them into licks, putting those licks together by using the ABAC form, and then practicing improvisation by swapping in licks of a similar rudiment at a similar spot in the tune. So we're just going to basically go through that process as much as we can in November, just so that we'll just be practicing that process so that you really understand it and you can take it and run with it. And then once you can do that, applying that to other chord progressions, other tunes, I think it'll make a lot of what we've been doing all along make a lot more sense, because that is the underpinning to whenever I'm writing out the improvisation week and I'm writing out the licks and I'm putting them together into solos. That's what I'm using, So the ultimate goal is just so that you can do it instead of, someone doing it for you, which I think is completely possible. Yes, you'll be totally kicking ass at improvisation after that. That is the plan. Question from Christian. So far, I failed the Dorian scale. It doesn't sound sad or it doesn't sound good. I'm not sure. Steve, question about last Saturday's workshop. Might there be more than just 2 rudiments for the 3-note section? Yeah, I mean, I did you go to the end of the handout where I did the 14 rudiments, 14 quarter note rudiments, 14 eighth note rudiments. I'll pull that up and show you just in case. Give me 1 second here. And just also for myself to double check and make sure that what you're asking for actually exists, because I think it does. But let me just pull it up and see. Hang on. So let's see. Okay, so here's last weekend's handout, and let's go to the end. Okay, yeah, so here's quarter note rudiments. So I just tried to think of like all the possibilities, right? So if you're gonna have 1 note, you can have it on the first beat, you can have it on the second beat, the third beat, or the fourth beat, right? 2 notes, you could have beats 1 and 2, you could have beats 1 and 3, you could have beats 1 and 4, you could have beats 2 and 3, you could have beats 2 and 4, or you can have beats 3 and 4. And then with the 3 notes, you can have 1, 2, and 3, 1, 2, and 4, 1, 2, 1 and 3 and 4, and 2, 3, and 4. So that's everything you can do with quarter notes. And then this is not quite as exhaustive because there's so many different notes, but there is a logic to this too, which is let's have all 8 notes, but let's put a quarter note first. Let's put a quarter note second. Let's put a quarter note third. Let's put a quarter note fourth. Let's put a quarter note on the and of 1, on the and of 2, on the and of 3, and then on the and of 4. And then let's combine and of 4 with all the other possibilities. So I didn't want to put that up front. Again, like that's a lot of possibilities. So I tried to just put the greatest hits up front, like a few rudiments that you can work with that would really work. So that's what's there. Let's see. This is again from Steve. I'm a pretty experienced fingerstyle player, but these rudiments are a great challenge. Good. They're a challenge for me too. It was really interesting to work them out. It's a lot of stuff that I think a lot of people, including myself, do intuitively, but it didn't occur to me to really try to work out all the possibilities. And I really, even if you don't, I was just explaining this I was talking about this with my friend Brett this morning, and we were just talking about practicing and teaching and stuff. And I was like, you don't have to assimilate these 28 rudiments to play music. But I find it very focusing as a small part of my practice every day to do, this kind of isolated, repetitive thing just to sharpen the brain, really. Sharpen the hands, sharpen the brain. That's really what it's for. I look at these. If you were going to go through this entire sheet as a warm-up, that would be, a way to really kind of get yourself in the zone for your practice day. And so, but you could also just take like little bits of these and, when you go back to that practice planner at the beginning of each month, or if you go back to April of 2022 and go through all the practice planner material, these rudiments are great for the first part of the practice planner, right? Just for working on your picking hand and for your coordination and your timing and all of that. So that's what they're for. You don't need to go through all of them. I'll review some of this stuff some more, at the beginning of November. Okay. Oh, from Christian. Okay, so this is back to the Dorian scale. Challenge is moving the bass over the Dorian scale. Yeah, it definitely is. I can talk about that more. Give me 1 second here. Let's see more. Good. I've been finding new little rhythmic ideas while doing the rudiments. That's fantastic. I think you're really onto something. Yeah, the rudiments concept. I literally got it. That's what drummers do. They do their own. They have. Drumming rudiments is that's been around for a few hundred years. And since I got interested in playing the drums over the last few months, I've been warming up with these. I haven't literally been doing rudiments, but I've been doing a lot of very just repetitive, routine things of just, playing the snare, playing the hi-hat and the kick on a repeating pattern of just like eighth notes in the hi-hat and backbeat on the snare, and then moving the bass drum all around through these different rhythmic possibilities, right? And it's just fascinating, just like what that does to your head and what it does to your focus. So I just thought, this is very similar. Like we're keeping a steady bass going and we're doing these different rhythmic variations on top. And that's really where the rubber meets the road. When I have, from just trying to figure out stuff on my own and from watching people try to learn how to play like this, the biggest hassle is that when your fingers start to go playing melodies, the thumb just wants to go to the Bahamas, right? It doesn't want to stay there and play the quarter notes. So there has to be some kind of way to practice that. And when you're already playing the tune, you're already thinking about so many different things. This is a way to just strip out all the melodic details and just focus on what's going on rhythmically. So as far as Christian's question about the moving bass over the Dorian scale, I'm not sure exactly what you mean, but if you're talking about doing a little surly and having the bass moving, again, I'm not sure exactly if it's the double stops part or like playing single notes, but once you have the basic coordination of the tune with the halftime bass, you could just do eighth notes as the bass moves, or even quarter notes, and just try to get every note of the E Dorian scale as the bass moves. So and then change notes twice as fast. Oh, sorry. And so you'd start to know where the notes were relative to what the bass is doing. And that's like just also an example of like someplace new that you could go with the rudiments once you've got it all on the vamp, right? It's like having this bass move. I mean, moving in halftime is challenging, right? So, I mean, just trying to figure out like taking a rudiment like, right? And then start to apply different notes to it. Right, and then whatever it's going to be. So, but that starts to be a lot of possibilities. So you want to try to limit them at the beginning. All right. Whew. So next week, no live stream. Post your questions in the forum. Take your time working on Little Surly. I'll be working on it too. and then we'll come back. We'll get going in November. First week of November, you've already got the workshop stuff to work on, right? But we're going to do it all with live streams next month. So the posted videos for the beginning of the month, it's just going to be the workshop material. That's just going to go up at the beginning of November. And then the first Thursday of November, we'll do the first live stream. And I think the schedule is a little weird because of American Thanksgiving. I'll double check and see how that's all going to work and we'll let you know. All right. Thanks for being here. Great to see you all. If you're watching on the replay, hope you are enjoying it. And if you are here as part of the trial period after the workshop and you've got questions, please post them in the forum or drop me a line. And I will be glad to answer your questions. And so will lots of other people here in the membership. So thanks for being here. And I'll see you around the forum over the next week.